Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Greek flower alleyway, and I'm sipping on some green tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, green oxide, fire red, fluorescent purple, cobalt blue, deep yellow, and burnt umber, which I like to call brown. And of course you can switch those up, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 2 brushes from my own paintbrush line, Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 5 round synthetic brush. I will be referring to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you could switch those up if you like, but that's what I'll be using. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are white, brown, and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a real light gray type of color that we'll be just using for our base coat throughout the entire painting. So I have pre-mixed my color, and I'm going to use my small brush in order to demonstrate how I got to that color. So this is the color I'm going for. How I got to that was a whole bunch of white, a little bit of brown, and a touch of black. And then I just mixed it together. So I'm going for a real light, kind of warm gray color, which is why I used a little bit of brown in it. And you can see how much darker it is than white, but it is still a pretty darn light color. So once you've got the color that you like, you're just going to use your large brush, and you can paint the entire canvas with this color. You don't need to use any special brush stroke because it's a nice solid color, light color with good opacity. So the brush stroke you use doesn't really matter because you won't really be able to detect those brush marks because of the light color and the opacity. It covers really well, so that way you won't necessarily see those brush marks. So when I'm doing a nice solid color like this, usually I just kind of go around these edges, make sure that I've got all those edges, and then you can just kind of paint in the middle. I like to use a kind of a continual left to right brush stroke to, I like to say, even out my paint so it is pretty level, which means there's no like high bumpy spots in it as it dries. Usually acrylic paint will self-level as it dries, which means it'll flatten itself right to that canvas. But if you have some areas that are pretty darn thick, it might have like a little bit of a lift to it or bevel to it or a little bit of a bump to it when it dries. So that's why I like to use these nice long continual brush strokes in order to make sure that I have kind of it all nice and level. I just go back and forth when I'm done, and then we will be using our pencil for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our alleyway. I'm going to be using my pencil. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that works for you, but I'm going to be using my pencil for this one. I'm going to guide you through a series of markers. We're going to connect those markers, and by the time we're done, we'll have a really cool perspective on these building, or on this building in an alleyway. So I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first guide you into the first shape that we're going to make, which is a rectangle. So I'm going to find myself about the center of my canvas on the top, and then I'm going to come down to about the center of my canvas up and down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about halfway between that and the edge of my canvas to the right and make myself my first marker right about here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight up from that, and I'm going to be about 3.5 inches from the top of my canvas, something like this. So you want these two markers to be at equal distance away from the edge of your canvas. So you can use really anything as a measuring tool. Like you could even use your brush and figure out, you can just kind of hold it up here and say, okay, well this marker is about this far from the edge, and then just slide it up and make sure that your other marker is the same distance. So that way you have them at equal distance from the edge of the canvas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the right, make myself another marker that's about maybe 1.5 inches away from the edge of my canvas. And again, you'll want this one at the same distance from the top as this one. And then I'll do the same thing for another marker for here. And then I'm just going to connect these with lines. So this is going to create a rectangle that we're going to build everything off of. So when doing a perspective building like this, if you have an anchoring shape that you can just kind of build off of, it makes your life a whole lot easier. So we're going to be using this as our anchoring kind of shape. So next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself the center of the top of my canvas, somewhere about in through here, I would say, and then I'm going to connect that to this corner in through of that rectangle. So something like that. And they don't have to be perfectly straight lines. They can be kind of sketcherly because we are going to be painting over them. So just something in a similar, direction would help. Then I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom left-hand corner, and that's where I'm going to connect this corner to. And this can be straight, or you can have a bit of a curve, because this is going to show the bottom edge of the building going into the sidewalk. And these buildings can have a bit of a curve to them because they're stucco, old kind of stucco buildings. So if yours ends up with a little bit of curve, that's just going to make it look like the alleyway has a little bit of a curve to it. So that's totally fine if that happens. So that's going to be that line. And then I'm going to take here and I'm going to go to the edge of my canvas, but I'm going to go up at a little bit of a diagonal, something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, only I'm going to go down at a slight diagonal, just an itty bitty bit to make it look like that's going far off into the distance. I'm going to put the illusion of a couple of sides of a second story to the building up in through here. So from here, I'm just going to come over to the right about 1.5 inches. I'm almost halfway between these two markers. So if you find yourself halfway, go a little bit to the left, and then you'll make another marker up top at the same distance from the edge of your, whoops, almost just lost my pencil there, at same distance from the edge of your canvas, and then connect those two. I'm going to make another vertical line just a little bit away from the edge of my canvas, somewhere there, and then you can connect these two. So what we're doing here is just creating the illusion of a second story. I want to put a rectangle for where I'm going to have my door on this, within this rectangle here. So this really you could kind of do it in any size that you want, but I'm going to have mine a little bit off center to the left. So from here, I'm just going to come over maybe about 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to make another marker close to the top, but maybe about 1 inch away from the top, at the same distance away from this line in through here. And then over on the right hand side, I'll do the same, only I'm a little bit farther away. So I've got it a little bit bigger here than it is here. And then I'm going to connect my markers. So this is going to give me an outline where I'm going to have my entryway or my doorway into this particular part of the building. So then I'm going to have one more doorway that's going to be on this long wall of the building. I'm going to have it right about here. We want to have a good perspective, so we're really only going to see kind of a sliver of this door. So right now we're going to make a really long rectangle. I'm going to come to the right of here, maybe about an inch, inch and a half, and then come down just maybe about a half of an inch, somewhere in through here. And I'm going to come to the right of that, maybe about an inch, and then down just a little bit. These should be at a similar angle as this, so somewhere in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two corners all the way down to the bottom of this line in through here. So again, you could use some kind of measuring tool. If this is like the center of my canvas, I can say, okay, well that's to there, and then just kind of slide it down, knowing where the center is, and give myself another marker here. And then I could, in essence, just kind of measure the distance between these two and do the same thing down at the bottom, giving myself another marker there. I'm going to connect these with really long vertical lines like this. And of course, you could certainly use a ruler if you wanted to. That's going to be totally up to you if you want to use those kind of aids in your making process. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from here. There's going to be some stairs in through here, but right now I just want to kind of section off where I want the door. So I'm going to come up from here, maybe almost 2 inches up in through here, give myself a horizontal line like this, and then I'm going to bring this corner all the way up to the top. So something like this will give me this side in through here. And that is all I'm going to be doing for the outline of my alleyway. We will be using our, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your pencil away, take out your small brush, get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our doors. So that's going to be this rectangle and this rectangle. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are blue, brown, white, and a little bit of black as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom blue for my doors. You could certainly use any color that you'd like. Maybe you want to have some pink doors or some yellow doors or red doors, whatever you'd like. But I'm going to model mine after a nice little Greek village, so mine are going to be blue. So I have pre-mixed my custom blue here. How I got to that was I used cobalt blue, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of white, and just mix them together. Well, I think I need a little bit more brown there. The brown helps to give it kind of a little bit more of a greenish tone to it, a bluish green type of color, and maybe a little bit more white. And of course, you can make yours whatever kind of color that you would like. It's your doors. Again, you can make it whatever color you like. There we go. That's looking pretty good to me. So once you've got the desired color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my right door a little bit darker than my left door. So I just took my custom color and I'm going to paint in this entire door with this color. And again, it doesn't have to be totally perfect around the edges. These are kind of stucco type of buildings, which tend to have, especially depending on how old they are, and they have can tend to have kind of bumpy edges to the buildings along the corners of them. So if your lines are not perfect, that's okay. I am using a vertical brush stroke just because I want to kind of emulate maybe an old wood grain or something on the door itself. Perhaps it's an old wood door that's been painted, but the side of the building is got that stucco type of building material. So once I've got that on there, I'm just kind of thinning it out so it doesn't take too long to dry here. And then I'm going to do the similar thing on this door, but I'm going to add a tiny bit of white to my custom blue. So I'm going to make it a little bit lighter of a shade. So this one will look like it's catching a little bit more of the sunshine. This one will look a little bit more shadowed, and this one will look a little bit brighter, have a little bit lighter of a tone to it. So I just added a little bit of white to it. So it's going to be a touch lighter than that one over there. And this again is just one of those little tricks that if you know that this side of the building is in the sunshine a bit more, and these two doors are represented as the same color. You just make one of them a little bit lighter, and that's going to make, or one of them a little bit darker, and that's going to make it look like one of them is catching a little bit more of the light than the other one is. And then again, I'm just going all the way up to my pencil. I'm not necessarily needing it to be a perfect color or a perfect execution at this point, just getting this whole section in. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to wash and dry my small brush. I'm going to add some details to the one over on the right. So I washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to pick up some black paint with a little bit of water on my brush. So I'm going to be doing the center, or the opening where I've got two doors and I want them to kind of open down the center, and I'm going to be putting some little details on it. So I have black plus a little bit of water. So the water is going to help me to get these long, slender kind of lines to it, and continuous lines, and a little bit more control. So I do want this to be about the center of here. So I'm going to just kind of mark myself the center there, and then about the center down at the bottom. I usually really need a visual kind of starting and stopping point to guide my brush and my eye into the right spot. So that's why I like to make my markers like this. So once I've got that in there, I'm just going to give myself a nice long line in through here. And again, not terribly concerned if it's super duper straight. I think I need a little bit more black paint on my brush because that was just kind of disappearing on me. So something like that will get me. And then I'm just going to add some fun details to it. So maybe I've got, you know, some darkness on the sides from a little bit of shadowing or shading from the building itself. So I'm really at this point going to make some just kind of sketcherly type of marks. Maybe the top of my door up in through here is a little bit darker, something like that. I'm going to do some like square type of marks. So if you want to have kind of symmetrical type of architectural details, what I like to do is just kind of bounce back and forth from like one side to the next. Maybe I've got a couple in through here. Maybe I use these down in through here. Maybe I go up and down like this. So now I've just kind of created these neat little squares within the doors. And you don't really have to do too much. You know, it's totally up to you how much you want to detail these doors out, but I'm really just giving these fun little sketcherly kind of lines to give myself a little bit of neat detail on the door itself. So that's going to be that one. I'm going to put the door handle on in a second, but I see some kind of unpainted spots from my base coat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of that base coat just to make sure, with my dirty brush, just to make sure I've got all these areas painted in. So I picked up some of that custom blue, make sure I've got these painted in nicely. And again, I'm just looking for a real, just loose kind of painting style here. I don't need it to be really tight. I am looking for this particular door to kind of look like it's in the shadow anyways, but I want to have, you know, a little bit of authenticity to these shapes. So that's looking pretty good. Looks pretty well executed to me. So while that's drying up, before I put my little handle on, I'm going to come over to this door, but I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And then I'm going to put a tiny bit of black on. I know I'm going to have a little like shadow between, this is going to be a sliver of a wall. So it's going to have, this is going to be a little shadowed from the main part. So I'm going to put a little bit of black going down in through here and a tiny bit in through here, and then we'll put some decorative, maybe a window or something. So I have a little bit of black, and I'm just going down this little edge in through here. I'm putting a little bit more water on my brush so I can just kind of pull this down nice and slender like that. That's looking good. This is all up here is going to be where my flowers are. So I don't really need to do much to that. I'm going to have my flowers hiding the top of this door, so this doorway, so I don't really need a lot of detail up and through there. This is going to be that little inside part of the door. This will be the edge of the building that we will finesse in a little bit. I'm going to put a tiny bit more black on my brush, give myself maybe the essence of a little window. So I'm going to just take and give myself maybe a nice little sliver of a window in through here. And again, we're just kind of seeing a little piece of it. So maybe actually I'm going to paint this all black, and then I'll put my details with my door color on top of it. So I'm going to just paint this black like this, and then I'm going to pick up, let me just make sure I got that bottom good. There we go. And maybe this is just hiding in there. I'm going to wipe my brush off of my paper towel. I'm picking up some of my door color, and you can just go right over this and give yourself a couple of little maybe pieces to the window. So something like this. And again, you can make it whatever fun details you want. And then if I want some detail like I have on the other door, I can just take my door color with a little bit of white on it and make an even just that door color plus white, and almost do the reverse of what I did on the other door, which is maybe just little highlights to show you, maybe these little pieces are catching the light a little bit in a different way. So you can, again, just kind of use your imagination with how you want to build these different architectural type of details on these doors. Maybe this up here is going to get hidden. I'm going to pick up some of that original door color to maybe just give myself a little bit more detail. And again, it's totally up to you. Just have fun with however you want to accomplish this. And then I'm going to go back to the other door. I feel like I would have you'd be able to see the door handle on that one on the right. So I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black and white on my brush at the same time. So it's in essence going to make a little bit of a gray color. So I have black and white. I'm going to go right, I would say about in this area here. I'm going to do a little kind of circle. Maybe that's the lock mechanism. And then I'm going to do the little handle in through here. So I created a little bit with a gray color. Now I'm going to pick up just white and give myself just a little bright highlight on top of it. So that'll give me a little shine to it. And then you can do any little modifications that you want. We're going to use our large brush for the next step. So you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to add highlights and shadows to the sides of the buildings. We'll leave the sidewalk for later, and we'll also leave the shadows that are created by the flowers. We'll do those later. This is just in essence going to give you the sides of the building, which sides are facing the light and which ones are not. So this one in through here is going to be a little bit darker. This wall and this wall will make light. This wall and this wall will make light, and this wall will make a little bit darker. So that way these two walls look like they're faced away from the sunshine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these three walls over in through here. So I'm going to be using white plus maybe a tiny bit of yellow to add like a little bit of a warmer hue to it. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of white paint on my brush. You don't need a lot. I'm going to start in through here, and I'm just going to kind of almost outline the edge of that. I'm going to do the same thing in through here. I can almost just paint this little section in like this. Because I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush, you may detect some of that gray shows through underneath, which is totally fine. That's what's going to make it look nice and realistic. And then on this particular one, I can kind of fade it up into that original gray color. So you don't need to use a solid white color on the whole piece of the building. On this one here, I've got my white on my brush. I'm going to pick up just a teeny tiny bit of yellow as well, and that way I can get a little bit of a sunshine kind of hue on this edge of the building in through here. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white paint so it's not so yellow. I'm just going to bring that to this edge, and then just bring this whole section in through here into a nice lighter color. And if you felt like these were too white, you could certainly add a little bit of that hue of the yellow onto those as well. And don't worry about these edges because they're going to be covered by beautiful flowers in a little bit, so you don't have to worry about that. While I have this light mixture on my brush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some lightness on this side of the wall in through here. I don't need to make the whole thing super bright like these guys in through here, but it will benefit us to have a little bit of extra highlight around the edges of the door and just kind of fading it up in through here. So while I have that light mixture on my brush, I'm just going to kind of rub it onto the wall in through here and then just kind of fade it over in towards this dark corner. I think one of the trickiest things about painting buildings is these subtle nuances with the color gradations. So if we had left this all just one color, it would have looked a little bit flat, but even just adding this little tiny bit of a gradation is going to help to make it look way more realistic. So I just picked up some more white with a teeny tiny bit of yellow paint, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, maybe just a teeny tiny bit more. Be careful with the yellow because it really can get away from you and turn it super duper yellow. Maybe a yellow building isn't the worst thing in the world to have, but so I've got my light mixture on in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it out into the rest of that building. And again, it doesn't have to be really in your face, having a lot of noticeable change, and it might end up a little bit darker as it dries, so you can certainly just play with that. And then what I'm going to do for these two sections in through here is I'm going to make them darker. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to take my original gray and add a teeny tiny bit of black paint to it. So I've already done it here. So I took my original gray and added just a tiny touch of black into it, and I just made myself a darker version of what I have on the wall, on the original wall themselves. And then I'm just going to paint this section in with this darker version. So I've got this, and if you need to use your small brush to accomplish this, feel free to do so. You don't have to muscle through these little sections with such a big brush, but I tend to not use too many different brushes throughout my painting process, so I like to kind of just work with what, you know, minimal tools. So, but if you feel that you need to or want to change brushes, feel free to do so. And once I've got this section in with this color, I'm going to either just use the remnants up on this little section, or if I have too much paint on my brush, I might wipe it off and then use maybe this gray plus my original gray, because I feel like this would be a little bit lighter simply because it's up higher. So I might, we'll see what I'm going to do in a second. Got this section. I think I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to use the remnants of it and get, so this would be like I'm feeling the inside corner of the wall. So maybe we'll just use a little bit in through here and then just rub it in. So I don't have a solid color and it's maybe a little bit lighter than in through here. So I didn't even pick up the original gray. I just used a little bit of the remnants of that dark gray on here to give it a little bit of a darker tone, but lighter than this one. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, make any little adjustments you feel are necessary, then you can wash and dry that large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our sidewalk or street or road or whatever you'd like to call this ground that we're going to be painting. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are white, yellow, possibly my base, my light gray, and definitely my dark gray. And what I'm in essence doing is I want this to look kind of like cobblestoney, maybe some street pavers, dirt, a whole bunch of stuff, but my ultimate goal is to make it look really sunshiny. So I'm going to make it very, very light up in this top area in through here, and then along the edge of the building in through here, and then I'm going to get it to go a little bit darker as it goes farther away, and then I'll put a little bit of texture with my darker gray. So I'm going to start with white paint on my brush, and I'm going to start up in this corner, and then I'm going to fade it out with a little bit of that yellow, and then we'll go out into the gray type of mixture. So I'm starting with white up in this little corner here. Now I know theoretically, or really, that this little corner might get a little tiny bit darker because of the turn of the building, but I've got a big stairway I'm going to be putting here. I've got stairs, a platform I'm going to put here. So I'm going to just kind of go for it with the lightness right now, and then if I have to tweak it later, I certainly will. So I'm rubbing my white on right towards the corner of this building, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it out in through here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up white plus a tiny touch of my yellow. So white plus a little itty bitty bit of that yellow, and this is going to give me a more sunshiny kind of version as I'm working my way away from the interior, or that part of the building that's touching the ground. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow. You know, I think, yeah, just a little bit more yellow and white. I was going to go yellow and brown, even though I didn't say brown, but I didn't. I did white and yellow. So I've got white and yellow on my brush, and again, just going to kind of rub it out. I want this to have lots of texture, so I'm using this circular type of scrubbing type of technique in order to just kind of get it on here, let it intermingle with the base coat of gray that we had done before. And then once I've got this on here, it's looking pretty sunshiny and bright, maybe a little bit more white up in this area over here. Again, I really want this to scream sunshine. Like there's just all kinds of sunshine just beaming into this little beautiful islandy, vacation-y kind of place. So that's looking pretty good. So now in this bottom right-hand corner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up a little bit of my dark gray without washing my brush. So I have a little bit of dark gray on here, and I want to give it kind of like a cobblestone-y slate type of texture. So I'm just going to kind of dot it in here, maybe scrub it out a little bit. Maybe there's these, you know, kind of square type of pavers. So I'm not looking to do a whole lot to it. I just want to give it some kind of interesting texture to it. It's not the focal point. It is just part of the street. My flowers are going to be my focal point. So this is really just giving me something to occupy the space that's going to color coordinate and be reminiscent of these pretty little villages and their, you know, old world kind of ground coverings that they have. And then I would just fiddle with it a little bit more. Maybe if I just picked up a little bit more white and yellow and just kind of put, you know, make sure all these little gaps are filled in as much as you want them to. Let it dry. See if there's any more that you want to do. Maybe you want to add a little bit more yellow into it, or maybe a little, you could even, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown just so you can see what that looks like. So I picked up brown on my dirty brush. You can really just kind of get all kinds of different colors and textures in there. I just picked up some of my original light gray in order to get that to kind of intermingle a little bit. So if you ever do something that you feel is too much, just go revert to that original light gray that we had. And that way that will help you to kind of continue to make all of these colors talk together. And then once you've got that all nice and set, we are going to use this same large brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the first layer to the flowers on the buildings. So this will be all the ones that are up at the top. We'll do the little falling petal ones later. We're going to just tackle these ones up here. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using green, black, purple, red, and brown. And what I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to be putting an area where I'm going to have like the greenery, the leaves that are going to be in between the flowers. I'm going to be applying that first, and then we'll do a base coat for the actual flower portion kind of subsequently around that. I'm going to have a really large area of flowers over here, and then it's just going to get smaller and smaller as it gets up towards this doorway, and then it's just going to kind of ride along the top of the edge of the buildings in through here, maybe a couple kind of draping over the top there. So I'm going to start with green and black on my brush at the same time. Through this whole process, I'm going to be using a dotting or stippling type of technique. You can see I have a little bit more green than black on my brush. The black will overpower the green very easily. So as you're going through this process, if you are not getting a variety of kind of the regular green and the black, you'll want to back off on the black. But I'm going to be using a dotting or a stippling type of technique, just kind of dotting it on like this. I'm not going to over dot it, because what will happen if I do that, it will all turn into one color. So I want to just kind of leave the two-tonality of it so I can have light spots and dark spots. So I'm going to bring a little bit down over on this side, and I'm just kind of thinking of where do I want those dark spots in between my flowers to go. And yours doesn't have to be the same kind of color pattern as mine. You can certainly make yours, you know, more greenery or less greenery. Maybe I'll have a couple of little pieces in through here. I'm going to pick up a little bit more green on my brush. I'm going to have flowers in through here, so maybe I'll have some of this greenery kind of popping out over here. Definitely some up towards the top of the canvas. And, you know, again, I just kind of want it to look like it's intermingling with my flowers themselves. Maybe a bunch over here in front of the door, or hiding the top of the door, something like that. Oh, I gotta hit this little, I forgot to hit this little area. I gotta make dark gray like that in a minute, but I missed that, so we'll do it later when we're doing the shadows on the building. So again, just green and black. I'm just kind of riding this little area up in through here, and then maybe as I'm going farther away, you can kind of make your marks a little bit smaller. So just kind of using the corner of your brush. Again, just green and black is allowing me to do this. I'm going to bring some up in through here. This will be some big ones on top of this building in through here. And again, just kind of keep picking up that green and black, maybe a little bit more green for me now as I'm moving over into this corner. And you can see I'm getting to a point where I'm eliminating my pencil marks too. I'm just kind of going over that. So that's looking pretty good for the amount of greenery that I want to have. Maybe just a touch more in through here. So what I'm going to do now, maybe a little bit more here too. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to create a custom color to start my flowers with. So I eventually will be using my fluorescent purple and red as vibrant kind of highlight colors, but I'm going to start with a kind of muted dark shade of them together. So what I did was I took my purple and my red and I added a little bit of brown to it. So I went purple, red, about equal parts, and then a touch of brown. And so what this is going to do is it's going to give me kind of a little bit darker, muted version of these two colors blended together. And I'm going to use this plus a touch of black, similarly to how I did the green and black. I'll use this plus a touch of black for my base coat of my flowers. But be careful on the black. Again, you don't need a lot. So I picked up my base color, plus you can see just a teeny tiny touch of black paint. And I'm going to start kind of dotting in between where I have my greenery. So something like this will get me started. As I'm going towards the edges, maybe I just kind of pop in like little pockets or little, you know, little clusters of the flowers. So it doesn't all have to be super together. It can certainly have those little areas along the edges that just kind of are individual type of flowers up in these corners, maybe a little bit darker with that black in there. And then as I come towards this right hand side, I'm going to kind of back off a little bit from that black, and then that way you'll be able to see this color pop a little bit more. And as you go through this process, if you still see some of your building behind it, that's okay, because that's what would happen. It wouldn't necessarily all be 100% covered by these flowers, so that these little spaces are gonna speak to the shadows that are being created on the building itself, because the light will shine through those little pockets that don't have flowers in them. So that's where you're gonna get a lot of a nice natural look to it. And if you run into some wet green paint and it blends in with your red paint or your flower color, that's okay too, because we're going to be adding all kinds of highlights and shadows and making this look really like it's got a lot of texture and dimension to it. So I'm just kind of dotting this in here, just giving myself my little pattern of where I want my flowers. Maybe this kind of comes and hangs over the edge here. Maybe we bring this all the way over into there. That's going to give that some beautiful, you know, maybe insinuate that there's a building up above it that's got some flowers on it. And then maybe this kind of is a big area in through here. And again, don't worry about it being too dark or muted at this point. You know, you can still, I'm using mostly that custom color at this point. And I just now picked up a tiny bit more black just to give myself the opportunity to make sure that I have some light spots and dark spots. But yours can certainly be very bright or, you know, on the darker side. That's gonna just make it your own. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So you can put the large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna paint the stairs. I'm gonna use my small brush. The colors I'm using are brown, yellow, white, and if I need any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have 3 stairs coming down here and then just one kind of platform stair on here. So I'm gonna start with brown paint, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the front edges of the stairs. So this way we kind of have a place to build off of. So I'm gonna put brown paint on my small brush, and I'm gonna work on this set of stairs first. So I'm gonna assume that the little platform where the person would stand on is right in through here going into the doorway. So I'm gonna give myself just a little rectangle shape in through here. And again, we're gonna be putting additional colors on this in a minute. I'm really just looking to give myself someplace to start. And these buildings, they can, you know, the stairs can be crooked, they could, you know, they're built out of concrete or, you know, all kinds of different kind of building materials, and the older they get, the more character they get to them. So that's gonna be that one. I'm gonna have another front to the next step is gonna be somewhere in through here. So in order for you to not go down too far, what you can do is give yourself a couple of markers that will kind of split this section in 3. And then you can do 2 more markers right in through here. So that way you're more likely to kind of just not go too far. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight out from this corner over to the right, a little bit more than halfway between here and here. So this will be like the corner of that step. I'm going to connect here to here just so I have that top line to know where I'm headed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to come around this corner like this and to about here in a little bit of a diagonal way, and then I'm going to connect here to here. So this in essence is giving me the front part of this step, and it's kind of looking this way. So we're going to have the fronts of the steps like this, and this is the side, and then we'll do the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and give myself a little vertical line, bringing this corner down to where the sidewalk meets the wall. And then I'm going to ride this diagonal line to about here. And then I will connect here to here. And I'm going to color in this section with brown. So all the way to here, just color this section in with brown. And again, this is the side of the step. We'll be doing and this is just the base coat for it. We'll do the top in a minute, but this just gets us going. And brown can be see-through, so if you still see a bit of your line underneath from previous drawing, that's fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the left from this corner about, I would say, like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, somewhere in through here. I'm going to give myself a little dot. I'm going to come down to the edge right in through here, give myself another little dot. Again, this is going to keep me kind of making sure I don't go too far, and then this is going to come over to the right. So I'm trying to keep these kind of horizontal, but as I turn the corner of my stair, I'm going to have the corner of my stair like this. I'm going to have it get narrower and narrower as it goes farther away, as if to imply that we're going uphill a little bit. So I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. I'm going to take from this corner here, just give myself a little bit of an outline so I know where the edge of that stair is. I'm going to give myself a vertical line, just a little tiny bit. Then I can connect these two in through here, and then I can connect these two. So just one of them, the bottom one is a little bit longer. So this way that stair looks like it is kind of getting smaller and smaller, as if they did it on purpose because it's going uphill. And then I'll connect these guys in through here. Maybe this goes a little bit, there we go. Connect these in through here. So once I've got this, I'm going to paint that front part with brown also, connect these two. And again, I'm not concerned about this being a perfect coat because I'm going to have light spots and dark spots. It's some kind of concrete masonry kind of building material, so it's going to have dirt and, you know, all kinds of lights and darks. So that's good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash my brush. Oh, I have to do the front of that. Hold on. I'm going to put brown back on my brush now. I'm going to do the front step, or the front of this side of this one too. So I'm just going to do like a little oval type of shape for this one. So I'm going to start a little bit to the right of this door in through here. And I'm going to bring it, I would say, about out to here. Just giving myself that front edge to the step. That was a little aggressive. We'll just wipe it away with the finger. So something, this is going to almost touch this one. So just a little bit up to the left of that one, bringing this in through here. And this is going to wrap around this little corner here. And I wouldn't imagine that we would see this left-hand side if it wrapped around there. So I'm just going to kind of give myself a little, little tiny edge like that and like that. So that works for me. Now I'm going to wash my brush so I can do this little sliver of that building. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up dark gray, which I didn't say I was going to use, but I'm picking up dark gray. I forgot I was going to do this little corner. I'm making this dark gray like I did this side of this building in through here. I would have tackled this before if I had remembered to, but you know, it caught my attention later. So a little bit of dark gray in through there does the trick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten the tops of my stairs, and I'm going to do that similarly to how I did the pavement. So white and yellow. I'm going to start with a little bit of white paint on my brush. And as I do this, I'm going to, this top outline that I used as just a guide, I'm going to disguise that. I'm going to paint over it, you know, until you can make it totally go away if you have enough contrast between here and here. We're going to have shadows on the building, which will help it pop out. But for purposes of being able to see it right now, you might want to leave a little or not, totally up to you. This step I've got going kind of in behind this wall a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit on this top step too. So this is just white right now, giving me the top of these steps like this, just being hit with a whole bunch of sunshine. I'll use yellow in a minute, but just getting this base coat of white. This one actually wraps around the side of the building a little bit. So I've got this right in through here, and I'm just painting it with white right now, just making sure that makes sense to me, which just because it makes sense to me doesn't make it make sense to everybody else, but that looks pretty good. I'm going to put some white on this one over here too, just bringing it right up to that doorway in through there, and I'm going to pop a little bit of yellow and make them go a little bit darker as they recede towards the doorways. So white plus a little bit of yellow on my brush. And again, you could use brown too, white plus brown, whatever works for you. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker as it gets closer to the, or farther away from the sunshine, we should say. So the edge is the brightest, and then I make it get a little bit darker as it goes in, and I'm using yellow as my darkening agent in through here. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the front of those steps, but I'm going to put a little sunshine on them. So I have white and yellow remnants on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of rub it on here and kind of just to give that front edge of the steps a little bit of sunshine. So you can bring it right to what you perceive to be the corner of your step. I think my corner of this one should be a little bit to the right. There we go. And then you can put a little bit I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown just to make sure that I've on my dirty brush, just to make sure this all kind of works well together. So yellow, white, and brown are my colors that I'm using right now, just to give myself some good kind of textural elements on the sides of these steps and giving them a little bit of sunshine. Picking up a touch more white right now just to give myself that brightness on the edge, and then I just fiddle with it. So these are the fronts, so they'll be the brightest. These are the sides, so they'll be a little bit darker. You can tweak it as much as you want, and then we're going to be using our we're going to use this small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint flower shadows on the buildings. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are my dark gray and black, and if I need to use any other colors, I'll let you know, but that's where my head is right now. Probably, maybe, I don't know, maybe some light gray too. But what I'm in essence going to be doing is I'm going to be making the illusion of a whole bunch of shadows from these flowers on the building. So I'm going to be using this dark gray for this side of the building and this side of the building. And then I'm going to incorporate a little bit of black in my shadows for this part of the building because that would be darker. I'm going to put a little bit of darkness down like in the crook where the ground meets the building, so I'll use a little bit of black there. And I'll probably pull out a little bit of the shadows of the flowers on the ground too, because I feel that there would be little bits on the ground too. So I'm going to be making a whole bunch of squiggly mark making. So when I put the paint on my brush, I'm going to be just giving myself the illusion of whatever these are, kind of roundish type of shapes that are being cast the shadow on here with pockets of sunshine coming through. So if the sun was over there, my shadows would be kind of going to the left. I'm envisioning my sun to be straight up in the sky, maybe a touch to the right. So I'm going to have my shadows kind of going straight down my wall, maybe a little bit to the left, a little bit diagonally to the left, but predominantly just straight down the wall. They would be skewed, so they're not going to be like a mirror image of this shape. They're just going to be kind of long, circular type of streaky marks. It's a great explanation, but you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my dark gray. You can also use a touch of water on your brush too, so you can have some good fluidity to it. I definitely want to have some underneath in through here, so I know that, you know, you don't have to go one for one. Just really feel the process of it all on your own, but you definitely want to have some dark areas underneath, directly underneath these flowers. That's where the shadow starts, so it makes sense that you definitely represent that as best as you can initially, so you don't forget to do that, because if you just have flowers floating or shadows floating down here, it wouldn't make a whole bunch of sense. So so I don't miss that part, I'm gonna start there, and then I'll work my way down the walls. And then again, I'm just picking up that dark gray, I'm going right up underneath here, and if you bump into some of the flowers along the way, so be it, that's totally fine. So I've got those ones in through there. I'm going to kind of stick a couple up in through here. And now that I've got that, and I'm not afraid, not afraid, but that I don't fear missing that section anymore, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up pulling these a little bit further down the line. So I've got to make myself more dark gray right now. I'm doing that right on the fly, but it's not going as fast as I thought it would. So once I've got my dark gray, what I'm going to do, here we go, we've got it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these even further down. So I can take this and then just kind of make all kinds of like long squiggly kind of marks. Maybe I want a big area kind of coming in through here. You can make spaces in between them. You can make them kind of curved. Imagine them just being skewed on this wall, and there's pockets kind of showing in between. Maybe we've got a big one in through here. As I'm coming down towards the corner of the building, I don't want to pull this down in the same direction, what I'll do is at that corner, I'm going to shoot it out to the right and just kind of give myself a little shadow on the ground itself. So by shooting it out to the right, that's going to make it look like it stopped at the bottom of the wall and then it was being projected on the sidewalk itself. And then I can go ahead and continue to do this. If I have a big mass right here, maybe this area gets a real big area of that, and maybe we've got like little squiggles in between them to just show that there is air or space between them. And this is like just one of those steps that's really fun and freeing because everything doesn't have to be a mirror image. You can just really have fun with how you interpret these shadows to be. You know, you wouldn't necessarily want to have like square shapes as shadows. You definitely want to give your shadows the illusion of being whatever that is up top. So, and I know I want these to be really long and have a lot of length to them to tell the story that that sun is just super powerful and is giving all of this wall some, you know, representational shadows. Again, I'm pulling this out to the side. I've got this one in through here that I'm going to pull out over in through here. And again, this shadow that I'm putting on the ground is really just going to speak to the way that the ground is flat and the wall is, or it's, you know, flat this way and the wall is going up like this. As I'm getting towards the brighter area of the wall, I can certainly, with my dark gray, I'm going to pick up light gray also. So I have dark gray and light gray. So this will make a shadow, but it'll be a little bit lighter tone than that. And that's going to help, again, move you into this brighter area as if this right side is being illuminated a little bit by the sunshine. Or you could put a little bit more water on your brush, which would make your shadow a little bit more transparent or translucent, which means you'll be able to see the color underneath, and that'll make it also a little bit lighter and brighter. So that looks pretty good there. I'm going to go ahead and put some on in through here. So again, this is just my dark gray, and maybe just pulling some down in through here, whatever these are up there. I can also put some next to this stair. If I needed a little bit more contrast from that stair to the wall, great place to put some shadows. So that will help with the edge of the stair being visible. You can just pop on some shadows in through there because that'll help with that contrast. Just try not to confuse the shadow wall or the shadows on the wall with that inside edge of the wall. So if you can just be mindful of that, that will help out. And I'm just kind of adding a little bit more in through here. And I continue to add a little bit of water to my brush just so I can have some shadows more visible than others and get, you know, some good transitional colors. That looks nice. So I'm going to, before I hit the dark stuff, I'm going to go over here and do some more of the lighter version of the shadows. So I just added water to my brush with the remnants of whatever else was on there because this is a really bright wall. So I just added a little bit of water to my brush just to give me the illusion of those shadows on there. I'm also going to pull some out on the ground on both of these areas. So a little bit in through here and maybe just some in that corner and then a little bit in this little area over here. Now I'm going to pick up dark gray plus a teeny tiny bit of black. This is going to give me my shadows on this particular wall. So this is dark gray plus a teeny tiny bit of black on my brush at the same time. Give me some real nice dark shadows on this wall and visible so you'll be able to see them. I have to go darker than the gray so you can see them because it's in this darker area. So we've got these little shadows here. Make sure that I've got the ones from underneath this part of the plant or the flowers. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using this. Actually, I think we're going to use both brushes next time, our large and our small brush. So you can wash this brush and get both out and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the flowers on the ground. I'm going to use my large and my small brush, but I'm going to start with my large brush so I can just kind of put a base coat down and kind of lay out where I want them. And then I'm going to put some strategic highlights and shadows, and they're going to look like fallen flowers or petals on the ground. And again, I'm just kind of going for a nice loose interpretation, impressionistic kind of style. So have fun with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that base flower color that we use, that custom kind of maroon type of color that we used. So a little bit is on my brush in through here. I'm going to have kind of a big section of them over here, and then I'll just have little sporadic ones throughout. You could certainly put them in as many places as you want. I just want to kind of carry that color from the top of the painting down to the bottom so it balances it out pretty well. So I've got just a little section in through here, and I'm not using my paint very heavily. I'm just kind of allowing myself to have this, what it kind of resembles to me like fall leaves that have just kind of piled up on the ground. So you can really make it whatever way you want. I'm going to do little kind of dabs of them. You can put them on top of your shadows. You can put them really wherever you want. Again, I'm just kind of laying out right now where I want some little piles or pockets of them to be. Maybe I've got a little rogue one over there. Maybe we've got a couple in through here. And once you get this kind of layout down, when we go to do the highlights and shadows, if you want to add additional ones during that process, that's totally fine. There's no Buddy says that you have to have them exactly where mine are, or that you can't modify them even more later. So I'm putting some at the bottom of these steps or the little corners, maybe some kind of going down the alleyway in through there. I'm going to put some in through here, and they're great for hiding things. So if you've got a little trouble area that is like, oh, well, that didn't come out exactly as I want, you just put a whole bunch of petals and flowers in front of it and you'll be totally fine. So I'm going to put some over this corner and through here. Not that it's a trouble spot, but I definitely like that, how the color is carrying through there. So once I've got that on there, I'm going to put my large brush away. I'm going to take out my small brush. I'm going to put some shadows underneath them. I didn't probably tell you all the colors I'm using. I'm using my custom maroon color. I'm using red, purple, black, and white throughout this process. So right now I'm going to start with a little bit of black, and I'm just going to kind of pop in a couple of really dark areas down what I would refer to as kind of the bottom of the flowers, maybe inside some of these in through here. My light source is up top. I'm going to have them kind of down towards this bottom side, or like inside of them a little bit. I'm just picturing these to be kind of little piles of flowers or petals just strewed about here and there. So whatever you want, or you know, if I'm going through this process, I'm like, oh, I feel like I would want one over here. Just make a little black mark and we'll put a flower petal on it in a little bit. So again, I'm not doing every single one of them. I'm not trying not to keep it too consistent. Just want to give myself some sort of 3D type of effect to it, and adding these little shadow marks are going to help to make it give you the illusion that there is depth to these little flowers. Maybe a little bit darker back in through here to give that corner and the dark side a little bit more depth. So now that I've got that, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm just going to start adding some really bright colors on top of them. So I'm going to alternate between purple and red. So I'm going to start with some purple, and again, I'm really just looking to give the vibrancy of these flowers. So I'm going to start with some purple in through here, and if your base coat has not dried yet, that's okay. It doesn't have to be totally dry. I'm using this small brush so I can have more kind of distinct type of brush marks, but you could certainly continue to use the large brush. I just knew that I wouldn't be able to control the large brush as much. And then again, if you felt like you wanted to add extra, a couple extra ones, just put extra ones wherever you feel that it would make sense. And then once I've got some purple on here, now I'm going to pick up some red. I just washed my brush off. These colors can certainly intermingle with one another. You don't have to make the purple in its own area and the red in its own area. I'm using both of these colors to give this this illusion of this really vibrant kind of magenta type of color. So you could, again, use it in whatever way that you want. The red right now is really popping on some bright tones to it. And if you run into some wet purple, like you're inevitably going to, just let them work together. When we go up top and do the bigger flowers, we're going to purposely mix those two, the red and the purple, together in order to get all of these great vibrant type of tones. So once I've got some red on here, as much as I want to have, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on a little bit of white to add this great highlight to all of these little flowers. So I've got that. Now I'm going to, without washing my brush, I'm picking up a little bit of white and I'm going to just intermingle, just kind of swirl your brush around, pop in a couple of bright highlights in through here. I'm staying, if my shadow, if the black is at the bottom, I'm putting the little white little tips at the top. And again, I'm trying not to do it consistently or systematically. So I have a thought process, but I don't want to overblend it. I'm just kind of jabbing in a little bit of white mixing it in with those wet colors that I just put on there. They're still wet, so I'm just giving you the illusion that there is little bits of highlights on these petals, just letting them twinkle on the ground. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be finishing our flowers on the buildings. So I know that I said I was going to use my large brush, but I changed my mind. I'm going to use my small brush. I feel like I can kind of manipulate the color a little bit better with my small brush, what I'm headed to do right now. So what I'm in essence going to be doing is adding any highlights to these to the leaves, these green areas, and then the petals of the flowers. So again, I'm using this loose interpretive type of brush stroke where I'm just going to kind of flick in some bright highlights to the areas so I can make them kind of pop out. I'll be using green, yellow, and probably a little bit of white for my leaves, and then for my petals I'll be using mostly red, purple, and white, and if I need to or want to go into any other colors, I certainly will. So I'm going to tackle my leaves first, and really all I'm looking to do is add a bit of sunshine onto them. So I'm going to start with green and yellow on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of pop out or tap in a couple of little bright spots of what I would perceive to be these leaves just kind of sticking out. So if you come to an area where you want a little bit more information in there, you can certainly pick up some more green, and you can also pick up a tiny bit of white. So if you want there to be little bits of leaves coming out that are detectable, using a bit of white on your brush will allow you to get that more detailed type of look to it. Just make sure when you're doing this that you keep some dark spots throughout so you can certainly keep that dimensional element to it. So green, yellow, and white are my three colors that I'm going to use to pop in a couple of little bright spots on these leaves just kind of popping out. And you don't need to do much when you're going into a step like this. Really what I'm looking to do, just make sure everything is colored in as much as I want it to be, adding little pops of highlights here and there, just again to give myself a little bit of extra dimensional element to it. I might not need to do much at all. I might go through this process and be like, well, I think they look good the way that they are. But if you're going about and saying, okay, well, this stuff is on the top, maybe that would warrant a little bit more lightness. So I picked up a little bit more of that yellow and white just to give myself a little bit more brightness on these leaves up towards the top. If you're feeling like, this is really kind of tucked under there, then leave it dark or just pop a little bit of brightness right along those edges. So that's how you just kind of play with that and make any tonal or shifts or details, the little extra details that you might want, like maybe a little bit more yellow and green up towards this top area because the sun is up there. And then again, I'm really being conscious about leaving these dark areas so they're look like they're in between the the flowers. So that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to tackle my flowers. So my flowers, again, I really am digging all this dark stuff, which is going to give me some good dimension to it, but I want to incorporate those vibrant tones to these specific type of flowers. So I'm going to start again with my purple. These flowers just have a million round little petals on them, so I'm just going to be using a round type of brush stroke in order to emulate that type of petal. And I'm going to give some brighter pockets you know, towards the tops of some of these clusters, and that's going to make them look like they're in the sunshine more. I'll probably keep it a little bit darker on this left side, and as I go towards the right, I'll get it a little bit lighter and lighter with more white through the process. So I just picked up some purple, and I'm going to get some purple going on up in through here. And again, I'm not going to overdo it. I want to have all these colors represented everywhere, but I don't need to overpaint it and paint every little aspect of every single petal with this purple. I want to be able to show the different values or the different tones throughout, and that's what's going to allow it to look like it's outdoors, and certain areas are catching the light a little bit different. Like maybe I just do purple in here, and maybe this section is going to be more red, so I'll just kind of leave that section in through there. Maybe I put, you know, skipping some sections, put in some little purple kind of coming over in through here, maybe a little bit in through here. And because I haven't used white yet, the purple will be transparent and it will see those dark tones underneath it. So if I've got an area that's darker here than here, this purple will end up being brighter or lighter than this one will. So those are just great little tips and tricks that you can utilize when you're doing stuff like this. By playing with that under painting, the under values of it will help to create the upper values. So now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up red, and I'm starting over back on this left hand side, incorporating the red with my purple. And of course you could be using them at the same time on your brush. You could, you know, pick up red and purple at the same time, but right now I'm just gonna add some of this red in through here, and in a minute I'll do some highlights. My purple on my canvas is still wet, and I didn't wash my brush, so this is allowing me to get these colors to intermingle as if we're just, the petals themselves look purple from one angle or more red from another angle. So, you know, that's these flowers are just beautiful, and they can be more purple, they can be more red, they can have these beautiful magenta type of colors. Sometimes they even look a little on the bluish side. So you can, I just picked up purple and red just so I can get both of these colors intermingled in this area, something like that. And if you pick them both up at the same time, you're going to get an even different type of look to it. So again, just have fun. And I'm just kind of using this little circular squiggle type of brush stroke. You can overlap it or put it in between some of those leaves that you've already incorporated. And I'm trying to keep these edges nice and organic, which means that they just look more natural and not like cut off. They'll give you those little kind of edges to the flowers, and you can bring it in between. And then once I've got this this red on here, I think I'm gonna maybe play with a red, purple, and a tiny bit of white on my brush. I have red, purple with just a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm gonna start sprinkling in just a couple little highlights on these areas over back in through here. As I go towards the right, I'll be more aggressive with my white, but right now I want highlights over here, but I don't want them to be invasive. So again, purple, red, and a tiny bit of white. I want you to feel like there's light over here too, but I want the light to kind of be a little bit more evident as it's going over towards that right side. So that's looking pretty good. I'm working my way over to the right. So as I work my way over to the right, I'm still got purple, red, but I'm increasing my quantity of white on my brush. So this is gonna give me these little brighter pockets that are just gonna kind of speak to maybe the sunshine being over up on this side a little bit more, and I'm just kind of tapping it in towards the top of these flowers. And again, just trying not to overdo it. That's a really easy thing to do, is just, you know, you get so excited when it starts to come to life with these highlights, and then you just want to put them everywhere. But you don't need to put them everywhere. That'll make it look a little bit too flat if you have too many highlights. So there is definitely a nice balance between everything. And then you just fiddle with it, let it dry, and then step back from it. See if there's any additional marks that you want to make. And then if you want to make more, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we're going to be using this small brush for the next step. So you can just wash it, dry it, and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one, and I'm gonna go with my dark gray. And in the building, I'm gonna sign this as if it's a shadow on the wall. So I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol. Whatever works is totally fine, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful building, a beautiful floral building, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.